So, this is the Dharma talk meditation period, um, and this is going to be recorded, being recorded, which is always nice because you don't have to hang on every word or try to retain anything. Just, of course, we want to retain it, but just letting it. Um, I've heard the instruction, listening with the body as opposed to listening with the mind, which might have some resonance. Um, so, a couple was going to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary, and they decided that they would go to the same kind of simple hotel that they had stayed in after their honeymoon. They were living somewhere cold, Minneapolis, I think, and we're going to go to Florida for this celebration. But they both had very busy schedules, so it turned out that John, the husband, would go there and he would arrive a day early, and Mary, his wife, who had other business obligations, would meet him the following day. So this is in the early days of the internet. Some of you, most of you, will probably remember when you would go to a place like a hotel and there would be a terminal in the lobby that you could log into email with. So John got to the hotel and he saw there was one of these terminals, so he, logged into his account and he sent an email to Mary, Mary526 at AOL.com. But in typing the email, he mistyped the email and it went to Mary527 at AOL.com. And this other Mary who received the email uh, had unfortunately just come home from the wake of her deceased husband, who was a very devout preacher and died unexpectedly. So the Mary, who was recently widowed, thought she would check her email because she thought there might be some condolences or words of comfort from people she knew in email. So she had her son log her into email, and the son went into the other room. He heard a scream and then he heard a thud. And he came into the room to see what had happened, and he saw these words on the computer screen. Dear Mary, you're probably surprised to hear from me. They have internet here now. Everything is ready for your arrival tomorrow. P.S. Sure is hot down here. Joy is a supporting condition for samadhi, so maybe not exactly the bubbly laughter of joy, but it's in the neighborhood, it's in the vicinity. Um, so today I want to talk about shamatha or tranquility, meditation, the development of samadhi. Concentrated mind, the mind that is responsive and malleable and settled, stable, steady, a mind that is much more our servant than our master, that we have some agency to direct. And mindfulness is kind of our way into this quality of mind. Pretty much always aware when we're conscious, at least, and maybe somewhat in our dream states. But often that awareness is like just enough to navigate the world, but we're not really connected to it in some way. You get in a car, you get from one place to another, you have no idea how you did it. It just sort of happens on autopilot. But this quality of mindfulness is, it's not, we're aware, we know that we're aware, we know that what we're aware of, we're kind of clearly seeing our experience. And then there's a secret sauce, which sometimes you say with like the awareness is non-judgmental, or the awareness is infused with care, kindness, metta, or the Buddha rendered it as free from desires and discontent with regard to the world. Or sometimes it's translated as having overcome covetousness and grief. I don't use that second translation, mostly because it's hard to say the word covetousness. That's not a word that we normally use. Um, so overcoming desires and discontent, it's a little bit like you could see where judgment, non-judgmental comes from, how that's connected, but I think it goes further. We're being asked to cultivate a whole range of qualities of heart, like generosity and patience and resolve, kindness, compassion, the ability to let go or let be. And meditation is the place to build these capacities. It's almost like we can't really practice for an extended period of time unless we kind of soften into these ways of being. It's almost automatic. And everything that we experience in our life, this whole thing that we call, my life, is made up of just 6 things. Sights that the eyes connect with, and thus images appear in awareness, sounds, tastes, smells, tactile sensations, all these things arising and passing away in awareness, thoughts, images in the mind, words arising and passing away in awareness. And we know that our state of mind influences our physical and emotional health. Um, our attitude of mind informs where we go in moments of stress. Like what's our go-to kind of response of reactivity or fear or anger, paralysis, collapse. So when we change our minds, when we cultivate something in our minds, we literally change everything. The whole world changes. Jordan says we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. So, one way I like to think about meditation practice, I got this from a teacher that Adam and I share, Tanisara. She describes meditation practice as developing the wisdom to know where to rest the attention, developing the wisdom to know where to rest the mind. I could say developing the wisdom to know where to rest the heart. And this is so important in a world where there's so many demands on our attention, so many things calling out for our attention, and what's most worthy of our attention in this moment, what's more deserving. I mean, our attention is a kind of life force energy, like we love through our attention. Um, there's a profound duration of spiritual practice to really develop this wisdom to know what I should be attending to in any moment for my own benefit, for the benefit of others, for the alleviation of suffering for myself and others. And then the second part of meditation practice is develop the stewardship of mind where we can actually do that, so that when we go to the birthday celebration, we're actually there, engaged with and enjoying it. We're not worrying about something else. Mind isn't time traveling. Um, Whatever we practice, we get good at. This is the beautiful thing about human beings. Like, we look at people who have talents in music or sports or art or dance. Um, Wherever we rest the heart, the brain actually gets more efficient at doing that thing. Neuroscientists say neurons that fire together wire together. So that we actually become more efficient at doing the task. The Buddha said, whatever a person thinks and ponders becomes the inclination of the mind. So you don't have to think about, like, if you play a musical instrument, say, you don't think about it when you're doing it. It comes from a different place in your being. If you play a sport, okay, imagine tennis, I'm not calculating trajectories, or, like, you just do it. It happens at a much more efficient level of our being automatically. So we're always practicing something. We're always using our mind in some way, so we're always building neural pathways. We're building this mind day by day, and then that's the mind we're stuck with until we retrain it. So I know I'm preaching to the choir. That's the best thing. It's so important to be conscientious about what we're cultivating, what are we consuming, where are we resting the heart. Because if we aren't intentional, then our neurology is designed to be activated. Our attention is attracted by things that are scary and stressful and frightening. So unchecked, unguarded, that's where the awareness goes. That's where we end up resting the heart, end up cultivating a restless, scared, distracted, agitated mind. That's sort of what the culture, the environment are offering. And the culture and the environment is also offering endless modes of distraction. Boggles the mind, actually, how many things there are to capture our attention. I mean, just like streaming alone, more than anyone could watch in a lifetime. And these distractions, they kind of do help. They help us feel better. If I'm fully absorbed in the latest Netflix drama, um, I'm not ruminating about my problems. There's some relief in the feeling of being absorbed in something. If I have that, like, low hum of anxiety I was talking about before, as many of us do, then that anxiety has a place to land in the suspense or drama. So there's even like a feeling of integration. Like, maybe that anxiety doesn't feel as out of place because it's got now a context that we can project it onto. So for that time of being, and we might actually feel better. That's why these things are so attractive. Like, they give us a little bit of rest in the ruminating mind. Um, but the problem is when the credits roll, it's not that we're back where we started it. It's like, now I've got to digest that thing, the drama of that, the stress of that, the violence of that, whatever it is. Good drama is has tension, has conflict. That's what makes it interesting. The absorption of samadhi gives us that same sense of relief, um, but it doesn't have those side effects. In fact, there's a way in which it's not it's a lot of the agitation or activity in the mind is just being naturally settled in that process. So it's like some relief and also a step forward towards more healing. So anxiety, which I feel like is the thing I hear the most about when I'm around people, this feeling of anxiety. And it's a physical restlessness for sure, but it also has this effect of fragmenting or scattering the mind. And it's an interesting relationship because it's like a loop. You know, when the mind is scattered, we get anxious. When the mind is steady, we might feel less at odds for anxiety. Very unpleasant to feel restlessness and anxiety. And um, the Buddha actually talked about how the unpleasantness of the experience itself causes this kind of monkey mind, uh, what he called papancha, conceptual proliferation in the mind that just like sort of keeps going, uh, jumping from topic to topic or in a kind of thought loop. So, you know, I'm meditating and I feel some sensation in my knee and I notice it's unpleasant and then the mind says pain. And I start thinking, oh wow, this pain's actually kind of intense. And I'm thinking about my friend who had knee pain and then he had to have knee surgery and now he walks with a limp and he's in debt because he doesn't have good insurance. I wonder if my insurance is good. Maybe I should talk to my agent, make sure I'm covered. Maybe I should get one of those health savings accounts. I wish I had more saving. I wonder if I'll ever be able to retire. That'd be really nice. And the mind just goes on and on and on. And it's not productive thinking, you know. It's not accomplishing anything. And even in my example here from my own experience, there's a kind of worry is sort of like the through line of this. So I'm developing worry. And you know, this is a fairly light-hearted example of that, but this can be tormenting, you know, when we get stuck in these anxious thought loops, maybe we can't sleep, impacts our health and well-being in so many ways. Buddha likened this to an ox being enamored of its tail. And we just get stuck in this loop, and it's very difficult for many people to turn this loop off. So, in practicing this discernment, developing this wisdom to know where rests the heart, we can see very clearly that these thoughts are not supporting our well-being. And that's the invitation of practice, is actually to like notice this is unhelpful, to contact the experience of anxiety, you know, and quite directly, and feel the suffering in it. Actually, this is counterintuitive. Instinct says we should run the other way, or fight it, solve it, come up with some sort of solution. But and if certainly if we can solve something, we should solve it. But many things aren't don't have these easy solutions available. So either we're in conflict or we, at least for the moment, surrender, pay attention, gather data. There's it's quite well known now through the work of Jed Brewers and others that one of the best interventions to stop smoking is actually mindful smoking. And so the smoker who's trying to quit is told, you know, smoke whenever you want, can't smoke in the camaraderie of others or while drinking. But otherwise, you can smoke whenever you want. Just do it mindfully. So you pay attention to the impulse and all the things, the paraphernalia, and all the things that go into it, and fully experiencing the inhale, the exhale, and twice as many people as the standard protocol. Like the standard protocol has like a 25% success rate, and about 50% of people who do mindful smoking, they just realize this is terrible. And like the payoff in it often is like the celebratory environment or the camaraderie of uh, the actual experience is terrible. And the seeing of that, the knowing of that becomes a catalyst to being able to let go. And the Buddha would describe something similar with the way in which we can get disenchanted by things. And sometimes the word is translated as we can kind of get disgusted, like, ugh, enough already, like let's get it together. So the Buddha outlined a kind of process. It's a process that is chained to suffering, this chain of causality that keeps us locked in this samsara. And very key point of this chain is what the Buddha called Vedana, feeling tone. Buddha actually said all things converge on Vedana. Vedana is so important. In the four foundations of mindfulness, we give it a whole foundation just to notice this experience of pleasant, unpleasant, neither unpleasant nor unpleasant. Every time the sense organs make contact with experience, there's a almost co-rising experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither that's constructed in the mind. If I say accordion music, some people go, yeah, it's awesome. Like groaning, and for me, it's neither here nor there. It's kind of neutral. Pineapple on pizza, it's a very polarizing one. Cilantro, I happen to love cilantro. One of my best friends says it tastes like soap and regret. There's nothing in the cilantro. It's just the mind's construction. Apparently, with cilantro, there's some gene that influences whether you like it or not. Um, Cheesecake. I love cheesecake. Sometimes cheesecake feels like it's like doorway to the deathless. Like this is going to be the thing. Uh, the second slice is pretty good too. But then by the third slice, it's sort of like, becomes almost painful. Electronic dance music, you know, I might really enjoy that kind of music. I don't, but I might, let's say. But I wouldn't if it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm trying to go to sleep. And so Vedana is constructed in the mind and it's very contextual, it's very dynamic, it's constantly changing. And what the Buddha observed is that when experiences are pleasant, we tend to want to latch onto them, guard them, keep them, afraid they're going to go away. And when things are unpleasant, we tend to resist. He described as the resistance. He says people develop resistance obsession, which is like this, and it turns on. Both these examples turn on papancha. So if we're strategizing now about the way to get rid of this unpleasant experience and all kinds of movements of mind and the stories the mind might develop around this thing. And then feeling tone. So feeling tone often leads to craving or aversion. And we get sort of like joined with that experience and a kind of clinging. And the Buddha said, wherever there's clinging, there's suffering. Wherever there's craving or aversion, there's usually a lot of thinking about it. So this is really useful insight because we can just really pay attention to those moments of pleasant and unpleasant. And maybe it becomes just unpleasant. And the mind can kind of stop there. It's just unpleasant. We know things are always changing. It's going to be pleasant for this moment. Um, or just pleasant, like enjoy it, but know that it's also fleeting. Interesting, when things are neither pleasant nor unpleasant, we usually just don't even notice them. Mind's not attracted to that, which is unfortunate because neither unpleasant nor pleasant is um, equanimity. There's equanimity in that. Some of the deep states of absorption are described as, being profoundly blissful and peaceful and characterized by neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So there's a whole gateway that to something that we might be seeking that we miss when we don't tune into the neutral moments. But the capacity to tolerate, you know, like increasingly unpleasant experience is really helpful in a world that is increasingly demanding of that capability. And again, beautifully, we develop this every time we sit down to practice. Yeah. Yeah. Aches and pains in the body, maybe from sitting, maybe just from aging, that we can feel the sensation and sort of like develop, like it's unpleasant, but it's okay. It's not going to spin me out in some way. Um, or when we sit for longer periods of time and emotions start to surface, what Jack Kornfield calls the orphans of the heart start to appear, all the experiences we haven't had time to digest and metabolize, and we let those energies move through us rather than being collapsed by them in some way. This is, to me, kind of like the superpower of meditation, that we develop this sort of confidence in going through the world that whatever comes our way, we can meet it in some way. And if we do get knocked down, sometimes we get knocked down from time to time, we now have a resilience that we've built where we can stand right back up. Just the simple act of committing to connect with the breath again and again and again is building that kind of resilience, like loyalty or devotion to project. To develop this wisdom, having the ability to actually do it. Also, that capacity is being built. This very simple practice we've been doing. It's like training a puppy. You tell the puppy sit, and the puppy runs away. And you tell the puppy sit, and the puppy runs away. You tell the puppy sit, it sits for just a minute, and then it runs away. And but over time, the puppy matures. You might say in shamatha practice, we keep the puppy, the mind, on a very short leash by having the experience be very simple through simplification. And so, what I wanted to talk about now is making some distinctions between shamatha practice and vipassana practice. Many of us, learn this kind of as one thing, maybe without paying so much attention to some of the finer points. Um, Chart I made, which I can share with you all at some point. Um, So samatha, tranquility, calm abiding, um, vipassana, we usually think of as insight. So it's funny to talk about aims in meditation because there's a way in which we have an aim and we're trying to get somewhere. It's that what I was talking about with the snow globe, the strategy is actually at odds with the objective. But also, it's a kind of a paradox. Like we wouldn't be practicing if we didn't have some sense of the benefit of practice. So, in samatha or calm abiding meditation, you'd say the primary aim is cultivating tranquility, cultivating samadhi, cultivating a kind of mental stability which comes with an emotional stability. And this moves us from fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the stress response that well, many of us are in a lot of the time, whether it's because of the work we do in the world or just being in this world, which is stressful right now. And samatha moves us out of this stress response into a rest, digest, our sympathetic nervous system activation, which is profoundly healing. Personally, I think you can attribute a lot of the health benefits of meditation to just that. We're activating the part of the nervous system that heals the body. The primary aim of vipassana, you might say, is the development of wisdom, that we can see the world truly as it is. Classical insights that you've all probably heard ad nauseum, that we see, really understand permanence not as a concept or an idea, but as a defining feature of existence. We actually can learn to live in a way where that's the lens through which we see everything. Profoundly liberating, because if you see everything as really changing, then there is nothing to hold on to. Trying to grab a piece of the river. And the insight that, there's not a lot of lasting satisfaction, there's not any lasting satisfaction to be found in things or in experiences, mostly because they're also fleeting. And that, you aren't who you think you are. Take everything so personally, natural to take it personally because it seems like a very personal, like our subjective experience is very personal. And yet, whatever experience you're having in this moment, millions, billions of other people have had it, will have it. It's another manifestation of nature flowing through us. And these aren't things that we should necessarily believe, but things that we can actually observe in our vipassana practice. So the focus of attention in samatha is a simple chosen object. There are about 40 of them that the Buddha talked about. Breath is the most convenient. It's always there. But you can do this with body, with posture, with elements like earth, air, fire, water, colored discs of various colors. Do this with perception of space, infinite space. But it's a simple, steady object. And the focus of attention in Vipassana is observing phenomena in the body, thoughts, thoughts and emotions, Vedana, um, and really a kind of emphasis on the changing nature of phenomenon. Like this is what we learn when we learn Vipassana. Like just notice change. Everything's always changing. The focus of attention in Shamatha is less on the change. Maybe it's just a very subtle, advanced point, but we're experiencing the breath, and of course we experience the sensations of the breath, which are changing, but in a way, the object is almost like more the knowing of the breath, the fact that the breath is occurring. And the more and more we are able to relate to the breath in that way, not as changing phenomenon, the steadier the mind can become. And that, like, go on a retreat, concentration retreat or jhana retreat, they'll talk about, oh, it's almost like the breath as a concept is the object of meditation. The concept is not changing at all. That steadiness of the object of meditation aids with the steadiness of the whole system. So in shamatha we cultivate tranquility, calm, unified, undistracted mind, one-pointedness, in the sense that it doesn't have to be laser one-pointedness, but it can be just that, okay, the breath. I'm going to rest my attention on the breath and it kind of stays on that single object, the breath, or I'm going to rest my attention on red disc and the mind just sort of stays in that. A method, sustained attention on a single object to still the mind. Um, and these 5 classical instructions, well, 5 factors. Um, in Pali, there, Vitaka and Vichara are the first two. So Vitaka is a skillful thought, a thought that brings the mind into presence. That's that movement of mind from sort of ordinary awareness to mindfulness, where we're connected to the object of our meditation. We know we're connected. We know what we're connected with. And then the sustaining of that, vichara, so it's like and vitaka is quick. It's a movement of mind to come into mindfulness. It's just really quick. There's not much to it. And it's like the ringing of a bell, like the action to ring the bell, the vitaka is very quick. But then the reverberation of the ringing continues. So I'll practice this activity of bringing the mind into presence and then receiving that presence. And then at some point the mind wanders, so we ring the bell again. We bring the attention, skillful use of thought to come into presence. And then it's at the natural emergence of this simple practice of aiming and sustaining is the arising of joy, rapture, piti. And this joy is, usually quite pleasant. It can be exhilarating feeling that you have in meditation. It can be very effervescent, and it refreshes the attention. It gives us a kind of energy and enthusiasm. You get pretty boring, just like breath, 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 and then something just happens in the system that like counteracts that. And the instructions really are, to not get captivated by the pleasant feeling of energy. And this comes on continuum. Sometimes it's like people will report that they feel like they're levitating, so much lightness in the body. And sometimes it's just like a little sort of like nice feeling. uh, But to be steady with the object of the meditation, steady with the breath, of course you're aware of that rapture experience, but it's more in the background. Allow it to just mature and grow. And then the natural extension of that is sukha, a kind of happiness, a kind of pleasant feeling in the body that's more calm, less effervescent or energetic. And then the natural progression from there is ekagata, one-pointedness, so the sense that the mind is really responsive. Place the mind on the meditation object and it just stays there. It has a kind of inertia. And all this is very pleasant. It's so different from the ordinary state of mind that we walk walk around with. So in shamatha, we emphasize, relaxing effort, like de-emphasizing our thinking or analytical um, parts of our mind. Whereas in Vipassana, we might be emphasizing like clarity of awareness or sharpness to our awareness, noticing change, staying really intimate with the arising and passing nature of everything. Things that support, some of this is like overlap in some of this, but the things that support shamatha seclusion, both physical seclusion and mostly seclusion of the mind, citta viveka. So even if we live in a place that's not super quiet or super isolated, we posture the mind in a way that the mind gets secluded. Delight, pleasure, simplification, faith. This whole thing is premised on faith, because if we didn't have faith in the possibility for transformation, we wouldn't spend our time this way. Integrity, sila, so important to developing unification of the mind. Bless you. The Buddha talked about the bliss of blamelessness, that when we know we're living in accordance with our values, it's like we can relax in a certain kind of way. And I don't think there's a term for it, but there's something about like when we're not in integrity, that fact actually just causes some agitation in the body. For most of us, probably some people who are give them sort of diagnoses of mental disorders where they're not affected by their actions, but vast majority of us, the body will know when we're not living up to our standards. So there's a narrowing in shamatha practice and maybe even a widening in vipassana practice where we're really just opening to all things. The shamatha practice calms and soothes the emotions, just feels good and is healthful. And in Vipassana, we just see through emotions. We see that they're conditioned and impermanent flickers of energy in a system, flash of lightning in a night sky, and take them less personally and we're less at effect with it. Both provide a kind of relief, difficult emotions, but the mechanism's a little bit different. So I was saying in shamatha, we kind of move into this parasympathetic response nervous system. In Vipassana, we build a kind of emotional resiliency that's premised on flexibility, like our nervous system just becomes more flexible. So I think it's helpful to be more nuanced and discerning about like, where am I resting the heart in this moment? What am I actually cultivating in this moment? So as I said, so shamatha moves us into a healing response. Vipassana invites us to stay present with whatever's arising without collapsing into any kind of reactivity. We can actually meet any experience without flinching or fleeing because we've developed this capacity. So the Buddha talked a lot about this from the Dhammapada. It's translated by Gil Fronsdal. The restless, agitated mind, hard to protect, hard to control. The sage makes straight, as the Fletcher the shaft of an arrow. And apparently, I've learned in the time of the Buddha, it's very difficult to make an arrow. And now we have machines and carbon fiber and all this stuff, but to find something in nature, a piece of wood that is true, that's straight, it's actually not that easy. So they would have to very carefully select the wood and then heat it in some way, steam it, put it in a kind of mold. Like, it's quite an art. And I think that's why the Buddha used this analogy, because this is actually quite an art to develop this ability to tame our restless mind. Like a fish out of water thrown on the ground, the mind thrashes about. The mind hard to control, flighty, alighting where it wishes, one does well to tame. The disciplined mind brings happiness. Don't usually think about discipline that way. The mind hard to see, subtle, alighting where it wishes, the sage protects. The watched mind brings happiness. This is called Thinkers Anonymous. It started out innocently enough. I began to think at parties. Just a little now and then to loosen up. Inevitably, though, one thought led to another, and I was more than just a social thinker. I began to think alone, to relax, I told myself, but even back then I knew it wasn't true. Eventually, I was thinking all the time. I would get up in the morning and start thinking before breakfast, and I would think right until I passed out at night. Whoever wrote this, actually, it goes on for like 4 or 5 pages, but you get the idea. And this is meant to be lighthearted, but addiction is no joke. Like, being even addicted to unhealthy thinking is no joke. As I was saying, it really can torment us. But it said, whatever an enemy may do to an enemy or haters one to another, far worse is the harm from one's own wrongly directed mind. Neither father nor mother nor any other relative can do one as much good as one's own directed mind. So, practicing shamatha meditation, as we've been doing, naturally over time will calm the thinking mind, would develop more stewardship over our mind. And the Buddha gave us 5 strategies for working with papancha. This comes from a sutta that is sometimes translated as the removal of distracting thoughts. So the first strategy for dealing with distracting thoughts is to replace the thoughts, give attention to different thoughts. And the analogy the Buddha uses is a skilled carpenter or apprentice might knock out, remove, and extract a coarse peg by meaning of a fine peg. So too, the practitioner gives attention to some other sign, some other thought connected to what is wholesome. And for each of these 5 strategies, he says their mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Like a beautiful image. So the mantra, beautiful thought to substitute. Anytime there's undesirable thoughts, it works well in meditation, but sometimes when I'm just going about my life and there's intrusive thoughts, I just like recite my mantra as an antidote or phrases of loving kindness. May I be happy, may I be safe. So the first strategy is to replace the thoughts with better thoughts. Second is to reflect on the effect of those thoughts. Sometimes they said reflect on the disadvantages of those thoughts. And here the Buddha uses a very graphic image. Um, just as a man or woman, young, youthful, and fond of ornaments, would be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted if the carcass of a snake or a dog or a human being were hung around their neck. You can imagine, like, if there was a carcass of something hanging around my neck, I would move faster than I ever thought I could to get rid of that thing. And yet we hang out with these sort of like disgusting thoughts. Um, So it's an invitation to feel the suffering in this way of thinking, feel the disadvantages of it. And as an example I used with smoking, like that become that realization of this is really no good, um, becomes a catalyst for to let it go. So replacing the thoughts, reflecting on the disadvantages of the thoughts. The third strategy is to ignore them. As I described this as just as a man with good eyes who did not want to see forms would either shut his eyes or look away. Um, and to me, this is letting them be in the background. You know, this image that I keep coming back to of my mind is over here, thoughts are over there. I'm just not attending to them, not having to push them away. I'm just not engaging with them. Replacing the thoughts, reflecting on the disadvantage, ignoring them. And then the fourth one is giving attention to the stilling of thoughts. It's like a kind of attending to the energy in the system that might be feeding this thought. So the example the Buddha gives is just as a person walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I were to walk more slowly? And then walking more slowly, they say, well, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And pretty soon they're lying down, moving from higher states of activity to lower states of activity. And the way I experience this is it's almost like my arms are waving around. There's just like some extra energy in the system. I might not literally be waving around, but there's just like some extra energy. And sometimes it's just the bringing attention to that. Or I have a somatic exercise I sometimes use. We could all do this together. Just place your hands here and take a deep inhale and then let it out and move the hands about 1/3. Deep inhale, moving about another third down. The last one. Do this a few times, you can kind of feel the energy setting, and then you build a kind of muscle memory if you keep doing this, where now sometimes I'll just do this motion, kind of a qigong motion, and it will engender some calmness. So replacing the thoughts, reflecting on their disadvantage, ignoring them, stilling the energy of thinking. And then the last one, the most fun and probably least effective, stopping them with energy. So the way the Buddha described this is, again, a little graphic. If you purposely use these graphic examples to make a point, when with teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the palate, one beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or the shoulders and beat him down, constrain him, and crush him. So it's maybe a little bit like how you might talk to a dog, like with some firmness. Sit, stop. Or a child that's about to like do something really dangerous, that you'd say something with some energy or some force, but there's no aversion in it, you know. You don't hate the dog or the child. It's actually a manifestation of love that you're trying to get their attention. Yeah. This is like sort of a last occasional resort, but for me, sometimes it's just like enough. Get it together. Yeah. Yeah. Brain in the crease. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, And all this happens iteratively. So this might be familiar to some of you. Autobiography in 6 short chapters. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes a long time to get out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there, but I still fall in. It's a habit. It is my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. Chapter 6, I walk down a new street. There's a pylon in this street, and I trip over it. What I love about this is that we learn by falling into the same trap again and again. Like we think that's a problem, and of course we want to do better, but it is kind of how we learn. The last thing I want to leave you with is, we often talk about path, eightfold path, a spiritual path, and there's a way in which that idea is problematic because it's like, you got to get somewhere. It's almost is like this place is no good. I got to get over there. That's where the good stuff is. You go there, and then here you are. I think we have to become someone different, or uh, kinds of ideas that are problematic associated with the idea of a path. But the version of a path that I have found very supportive is the idea of path activity. And this is a good example of how we like where we can rest the heart moment by moment, like a moment of wise view where we see the cause and effect of our clinging and our suffering, or a moment of wise intention that leads to beneficial acts of body, speech, and mind. More and more moments of gathering and collecting the mind, and then also moments of seeing the ever changing nature of phenomena. Buddha said, so you should view this world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Or spiritual maturity or spiritual development or sense of being more liberated in our daily life doesn't depend on any particular experience, um, their moment, but more about our commitment to stay aligned with path activity. And then it unfolds in its own mysterious, ineffable way. And mindfulness gathers data, and some of this is very easy to interpret. The mindful smoker sees how disgusting smoking is, and they let it go. But a lot of the data doesn't get processed on a cognitive level. There's something more mysterious and more ineffable that's happening in this mind body system that we actually get reorganized in some way that's very mysterious and almost magical. So the words of the Buddha, there are no footprints in the sky, you won't find the sage out there. The world delights in conceptual proliferation, the pancha. Buddhas delight in the ending of that, ni papancha. There are no footprints in the sky, you won't find the sage out there. There are no eternal conditioned things. Buddhas never waver. let's have a period of mindful movement, a period of walking. If walking is not supportive to your body for whatever reason, I have another form of mindful movement that I really enjoy. One of the ideas about inviting periods of movement is that if we just were to sit all day, there's a kind of like the energy in the body can kind of stagnate a little bit. And so alternating periods of movement and stillness is just supportive in that way. One of my favorite forms of mindful movement is just swinging the arms. And you kind of do this with a sense of like I'm using the least amount of effort required to raise my arms to about the height of the navel and then falling back. And it's surprisingly not hard to do this for half an hour. There's a uh, there's a retreat center in Malaysia run by a qigong master, and this is their primary practice. So for whatever 16 hours a day, they are swinging their arms, and it's very simple, but it does balance the energy. It tends to calm you if you have too much energy, or energize you if you have too little energy. If you like visualizations, you can imagine that this is like a pump that is pumping chi or life force energy from the center of the earth through the body. And then to just let it be a mindfulness practice. You can feel I feel movements in my neck and my shoulder, places where I carry tension, and something else you can try out. Bilateral movements tend to be helpful. Like walking engages both sides of the body. Many of us do what we walk back and forth when we're nervous instinctively because it calms the body. So this is also like another thing you can try if you're interested, um, or find whatever movement. I saw someone doing beautiful qigong outside. Whatever movement is supportive to you, use this next half hour for that. Maybe another time.